What is joy? It's a state that pretty much everyone would like to experience. But if you ask people what joy is, so many of them aren't actually sure. Is joy accessible to everybody? Are there ways that people stop themselves from experiencing it? Today, we're going to be talking about what joy is, how it's different from happiness, how and why we prevent ourselves from experiencing joy, and how we can amp up how much joy we feel. And after the discussion, we get to the most important part of this episode. The group frequency calibration at the end is where the frequency work happens and where change actually occurs. So be sure to listen to that. Without releasing distortion patterns targeted by the GFC, the change you want will be more difficult to attain because you haven't addressed the root of the issue. My name is Cheong, and today in Mastering Your World Through Frequencies, we're discussing how to feel more joy.
So Karen, what's your take on the difference between happiness and joy?
Yeah. So, this is my take, right? So this is just my perspective. And I think joy is something that we talk about a lot, and so is happiness, but a lot of people don't really know what that means. Like during the Christmas season, there's like the word joy a lot. Have you noticed that?
Yes,
like
I have.
Joy is like a thing around Christmas time, at least in the Western world. But it's a state that a lot of people aspire to, but they don't know what it is, right? Happiness is too, but we kind of have more of a framework for happiness. So to me, happiness is more from the mind, okay? It's a lower level vibrating state. So it's more conditional, okay? So there's usually a reason that you're happy. Like something, you achieve something and you're happy. You acquire something and then you're happy. Something happens in your external environment and then you're happy. Does that make sense? It's a reactive, sort of more mental response from my perspective. And when I tap into it on frequency level, it's, like I said, a more mental sort of framework having to do with expectation, assumption,
expectation,
story, all that sort of stuff. Joy to me is when you are living in the moment. So when you're, you don't have to live there for that sounds like you have to be there forever and ever. You don't. So it's when you experience a moment in an embodied way without story from your mind. So meaning, it's an experience. It can be very quiet because it's a spectrum, right?
Sure.
Yeah. So it could be like you really, really are appreciating these flowers or being in the garden or the sky, and you feel this expansion, right? And in that moment, even though it's so quiet, you're not doing anything like particularly amazing, but you feel like, wow, this is like, I feel connection to everything. It starts to go from joy into like wonder into awe, kind of like all spins together. But it's that feeling where there's no mind involved. You're not thinking, gee, if only the sky were a deeper shade of blue, then I'd be happier with it.
Right.
You know what I mean? You're just in that like rapture with whatever is in the happening.
Moment.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, because it's a spectrum, it can be like really loud also, like maybe we were talking about this earlier before this, you're like, if you're going down a roller coaster, if that's your thing.
Right, like, whoa!
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like this excitement, joy, thrill in the moment, all that stuff, but there's no thinking. You're just in that experience. That to me is joy. So to me, they're pretty different.
So it seems like the key points are, it has to do with the present moment.
Yeah.
Unconditional by anything outside of you.
Yeah,
and there's a spectrum.
Yeah, totally a spectrum. And the unconditional about anything outside of you is really, as we talked about, is like really comes from the mind, right? When you have an expectation that you have from before, right? Like, I think I should be happy here when this happens. That's very constructed by the mind. And so you get to that point and you achieve that thing and you're like, okay, so you have this moment of happiness, whatever that is for you, and then it kind of passes, right? Because it's an external condition. And it's weird, like we can get kind of it's weird how we can get caught in like obligation of happiness. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
It's like, when I graduate, everyone else is happy for me. Or like at a wedding, everyone else is happy for me. I should be happy now.
Yes.
It's kind of a weird dynamic we have with
Yes, I'll have to
happiness.
share a personal thing. And no insult to my mother by any means. She did the best she could, and I love her. But growing up, we all do the best we can with what we have and have different coping mechanisms. So
Totally.
for my mom, it was always happy.
Okay.
We always got to be happy, happy, happy.
Okay.
And so I remember, you know, growing up as a kid, well, sometimes I wasn't, you know, but got to be
all the
happy,
time.
got to do it. And, you know, thank God, it could have been a worse situation. Like, again, I love my mother. But sometimes I remember growing up when I was sick, I was like, oh, thank God, because I got to just be sick and I didn't have to be happy. I was like sick and I was like, oh, I can just rest. But yeah, you know, it seems like this society especially, like, you got to be happy all the time. It's not just my mom and helping us grow up.
I feel
it's a societal thing.
It's a societal thing. I actually feel it's a very American cultural thing.
Oh, sure.
Because it's not that way in every country, as far as I've experienced or what I've noticed in traveling. But I feel like it's interesting, like this state of, like, as you say, very positive viewpoint.
Stay positive,
you know, stay positive. You have to be happy because that means something about you.
Right.
So joy has nothing to do with any of that. You could have been sick, actually. Now, it's harder to be joyful when you're sick, but even in the relishing of, like, your sickness, you know, you can be like, wah, you know what I mean? Like, just like, for example, this is a totally gross example, and I'm sorry if this wigs you out if you're a body function person who finds this gross, but, like, say you have a big head cold, and then you blow your nose and there's this huge snot, right? You can actually kind of have joyfulness in the huge snot coming out of your nose.
Right, there's a relief there.
There's a relief
You're
there.
present.
Yeah, exactly. And then this, like, hilarious moment of, like, noticing the snot in your Kleenex, right? It's not like you're advertising this to the universe or anything, but it's just kind of like this moment where even in the, like, yuck of the sick, right? Like I said, it's a spectrum, right? What in terms of the joy you can access. In that moment, it's a form of joy. Does that make sense? I'm not saying you're, like, blissed out when you're in that experience, obviously, but it's a form of joy because you're not thinking about it. You're not trying to be anything the way other than you are, and you're just in that moment. And again, like you talked about, the experience of joy is embodied. So it's not, you're not thinking, I should be some way. You're just experiencing that in your body, meaning whether it's the snot coming out of your nose, right? You on the roller coaster, looking at the starlit sky, playing with your child, being with your dog, those things can be extraordinarily joyful if we're present in the moment. And that's why I keep talking about being present in the moment. Like, why do people talk about this all the time? Because it's in that moment where you're centered in the 0 point. When you're centered in the 0, you can start to access the infinite of the eternal now. You have to be vibrating high enough in order to do that, but you're right on that threshold. So it's kind of like where you have this merging in that present moment of you as a human and you as consciousness. It's in that moment there is that overlap. And that's in part what creates that joyfulness, because there's no, like, human distortion of, like, thinking and shoulds and expectation and story. It's just in the moment, right? Which is like, and then you're having, depending on how your frequency resonance is, consciousness experiencing life, right? And when you're in life like that, life loves you back because there's no filter between you and life. You're just experiencing it. So that to me is joy, you know, and that to me that's not filtered through the distortion of the mind. It's just in the experience.
Right. That reminds me of, like, the flow state.
Yeah, totally.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, all of that drops away and you're completely present. And that's a true state of joy. And you could be doing anything. Like, there was, like, a Buddhist parable or something about, like, a butcher cutting meat. And he's so present, like, he never even hits the bone or something like that. I don't eat meat, so that's kind of gross to me. But but anyway, the point is he's in his flow state. Whatever you're doing,
it doesn't
you're
matter.
Cleaning a porta potty.
It doesn't matter.
And that's the unconditional part. It's not conditional to your environment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, it's funny, I've noticed this in my clients, is sometimes, not everybody obviously, but I've noticed a couple people say, I don't know what joy is. And I thought that was interesting, that we need to define joy. And to me, if you have to define joy, you're not experiencing it.
Because that's the mind.
That's the mind.
Got it.
Yes. Joy is, you enter that joy state simply by coming into that present moment and being in the flow of the unfolding, right? So look, it's not like most people can be in a joy state for like days on end, you know, or like weeks on end. And that's why living your brilliance is so important, because when you start to cultivate your brilliance and you become aware of, experience, and live from it, we are literally hearing stories of people staying in that state where they're in their brilliance and experiencing the present moment and in joy for days and weeks.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Why is that happening? Because you are cultivating the brilliance within the big S self that we've talked about before. You as consciousness. Again, the present moment is the overlap between you as small S self, as your humanness, and your spirit. So you get that expansiveness in the form. That's really amazing. And that's part of cultivating your brilliance. And that's where you can access joy. Now, do you have to cultivate your brilliance in order to access joy? Helps a hell of a lot. You know, but you can experience joy just by being in the present moment. You know, if you can come into that moment and really, if your resonance is high enough, if you've cleared enough of your distortion, you can just be in it without expectation. The mind is what pulls the resonance down.
So like your client, I don't know what joy is. She's identifying with something.
Yes.
And that's mind.
Yeah,
Can you
exactly.
talk more about that?
Yeah. So for this particular person, she experienced trauma in her childhood. Which was quite severe. And for her, her story was around being in that, having experienced that trauma. So everything in her adult life was trying to get away from that trauma, which I understand, right? If you experience that, it's terrible, and you're trying to resolve it, right? So please know, I'm not blaming this person.
Yeah.
Okay. However, because she had suffered abuse, she spent a lot of time also blaming her abuser, which I understand also. Okay. So please know, again, no judgment around it. However, because she was wrapped up in that past experience and it formed so much of her identity, she couldn't live in the present without referencing that past.
Yes.
Makes sense? She was living her present through the filter of her past, of her wounding.
Right.
It's like she almost felt bad if she was experiencing the present moment without feeling some kind of guilt, shame, memory of that past wounding, see? So as we release the distortion patterns, and she came more and more into being able to release those distortion patterns, not being able to, but just actually releasing the distortion patterns and being able to live in the present moment without that filter, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Then she starts to be able to experience joy without a label.
Right.
And it's really difficult for people who are going through this, especially if there's an abuser. And I think at one point in one of my sessions with her, I said to her, do you want to give this other person who abused you that much power over your present moment? They did it then, okay? And they had the power then, and you were a small child, so you didn't have power then. Do you continue to want to give it to them now? Okay? And so, again, I am not belittling her experience. However, in that moment, she was like, no, I don't. She had done enough to release enough of her distortion and enough of her low self-worth to be like, no, I claim the present moment for me without that person in it. Because she realized in that moment for her that she was allowing that to experience and filter her present moment and was robbing her of her experience of it, of the happiness, the joy, the higher level emotions. Because for her, she couldn't get into joy. She had to kind of go into happiness, which is a lower state, where she had to experience it more through her mind. Yeah. And then as she cleared her distortions, it became joy. Makes sense? So a lot of people can access happiness more easily, you know? And then they can kind of get up to joy eventually.
Well, this is all such a great reminder, I feel like, for anybody listening to like pause and ask themselves, like, what am I identifying with? Like, think about what, you know, when people say, hey, how are you? Not like the, hey, how are you? Good, how are you? But when someone actually asks how you are, and what story do you keep telling? Oh, I'm stressed out. Oh, you know, doing the same old, you know, I feel like that's helpful to be like, wait, what am I actually identifying? What's my story? Yeah. And am I able to access joy?
Yeah. Right? And can I just be in the present moment? Like, is it really my answer that I give all the time?
Right.
Or can I check in right now and how am I right now?
Right.
And so I have a family member, whenever I ask them how they are, they'll always say, not bad. And I think to myself, well, that's interesting. Are you not bad now, or do you, but it's always that answer.
Right, so then now it becomes like a little conditioning.
Yeah, and so that's what they keep creating, not bad. Right. And I'm like, well, right now, how are you? But it's interesting. They don't really think about it. It's more about what's pre-programmed. So again, it's like we have to be really mindful of our minds.
Yeah, and what we're identifying with.
Yeah, and our stories and the things we tell ourselves habitually and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Because all that mental stuff, what does it do? Keeps you out of the present moment.
Out of joy.
Out of joy. Yeah.
Wow, super helpful.
Yeah.
So I know like some past podcasts, you've given tips on different topics, but I feel like it would relate to this. Like, I guess staying present. Like, one thing you say a lot is you could be waiting in line and just ask yourself the question, how can I become even more aware of my connection only to pure source?
Yeah.
Because that gets you present and
higher resonance.
Higher resonance, yeah. So, can you just review just maybe a couple little tips to help if someone's like spinning in their mind or identifying?
Yeah. So usually, as you say, it's spinning in your mind. That's the perfect thing, because when you're spinning in your mind, you're not present at all. I mean, I don't know if I'm not if I'm spinning in my head. Right? I don't think anybody is. So if you're up here all the time, it's difficult. And especially when we're caught on our devices and all this sort of stuff, where we're then in comparison mode and all that sort of stuff can agitate.
And distracted.
Distracted and not present in our bodies at all. So my biggest tip would be to GPS, actually. So what that means, for those of you who don't know what that is to become aware of 3 objects in the space around you, and to become aware of the distance between each object and you. And by doing that, it forces your attention back to yourself and relative distance to things. That helps to put you more into the 0 point of space and time, which will bring you more into the present moment. Because again,
helpful.
The 0 point of space and time, for those of you who don't remember, this is episode 151, the foundation of the reality. So if you don't know what the 0 point is, please go ahead and watch that. It's a very important one. But the 0 point of time, the coordinate of time, is the present moment of linear time. Okay, so when you GPS, you are forcing yourself into the present moment of linear time, because you're bringing your attention to now, right? To you in relation to something else, or the thing in relation to you. And also, you can do that internally within your body. So for example, if you do, you can do spatial referencing within your body to bring you more present. So for example, like the distance between the right inside of your pelvis, if you take like this part of your body, the rightmost point on the inside of the pelvis to the leftmost point on the inside of the pelvis. For example, it's very specific.
Yes.
And then do the outer edge and the outer edge. You see, it's very small.
And then boom, now you're here.
Yeah, now you're like focused in your body.
Yeah.
Okay, or like maybe the bridge of your nose or the back of your ear, whatever it is, right? You're just bringing your attention into your body, which keeps you out of your mind, right? It brings you back into the present moment. And if you want to add to that, to become aware of your surroundings. Okay. So that's another thing, because when we spin up in our heads, we sort of lose our ability to become aware of our surroundings, other people. Like you'll see them on their phones, like they literally are crossing the street. There's a massive amount of traffic, and they have no awareness of their surroundings whatsoever. They're just walking across the street.
Yeah.
So that's an indication that you're not obviously present in the moment. You're like distracted by the phone. So part of becoming aware of your surroundings is helpful in terms of grounding you in the present moment.
Okay, which is like the bridge to joy.
Yes, exactly. Right? That's how you access it more.
Especially if you're spinning out.
Yeah, especially getting there first would be the first step in terms of even trying to be able to access joy.
Yeah.
So I just want to note that it's not causational, meaning just because you get into the present moment doesn't mean that you're going to experience joy, okay? So just for clarity, okay? I'm not suggesting those two things are intertwined. What I'm suggesting is in order to feel joy, you need to be in the present moment first. So depending on who you are, to be able to access the present moment, sometimes some people have to release a lot of distortion to even be able to be present.
Right.
Honestly, because we have a lot of mind stuff we have to release, a lot of lineage stuff, a lot of emotional stuff. It's hard for us to be present in the body for some of us. Yeah. So even accessing the present moment can be difficult.
Yeah.
For some of you, you're able to access the present moment more easily. But then you have distortion in terms of being able to be in there for long enough without the mind chatter and all the distraction, right? And all the different things that can keep you from being in that surrender state without having expectation or whatever show up for you. So if you can release more of your distortion, then what happens is you notice, at least this is what a large number of clients say, is not only are they less triggered, but they're able to be more and more present in the moment without their minds active. So there's no, you know what I mean? I'm not saying you're never going to be thinking, but you have moments where your mind just is very quiet. And it's okay that it's quiet. You don't need to fill it with something. You don't have to be doing anything. It's just quiet. And so in those moments, as they get longer, that's when you can start to experience that joyfulness and that spectrum of joy.
Right.
Yeah.
I feel like some people listening might be like, you know, a little bitter because it's like, oh, my life's so hard, you know, going back to that identity thing.
Yeah.
So that's why I think these tips are important. It's like, if it feels impossible for you to get there, take the baby steps. Like clear distortion, do those tips to just at least just get in the present moment. Yeah. Just start with that. Yeah. Because I know, like, you know, I have a 2-year-old and she's in her terrible 2 phase and it's really hard sometimes. Yeah. Like, I just want to scream. But then I notice it's a wave. Yeah. If I can make it through the wave, then it's literally fine. So a lot of life can be like that. You know, just make it through that wave. Yeah, stay present in it. Breathe and stay present in it. And then it's gone because everything changes. Everything's always moving. Totally. Right. And with a 2-year-old, they're actually very interesting to watch because they're in that wave. So they'll be totally, fully, 100% in the moment, full joy, right? Oh, like laughing their butts off. Yes. Right? Just, and then screaming with anger and just in a temper tantrum, like, but full in it. Full in it. And you're like, whoa. Yeah. Right? And then crying inconsolable. Right. And then laughing their butts out. You're like, oh, and then passed out. Passed out. You're like, I can't. Well, there's so much happening right there. So that's another thing. It's like, can you stay in your center despite what's happening in your environment? Totally. And I feel like that connects with joy too. Totally. Yeah. And the stronger you are because you're releasing your distortion patterns, the more you're able to not be influenced with what your environment is. And because you, just in what you said, you can stay present with her. You said it's hard. I mean, it's not easy. She's having a meltdown, right? It's hard. So it's really hard. And you're a mom, so you're trying to like resolve it, obviously. And can you hold your center? Can you hold? And at some point, I don't know why I'm picking this up on for me, but it's like, it's almost kind of funny, like, because you're holding your center and you're like watching yourself, watching her, and you're like, it's almost kind of comical. Oh, there you go. Bring the humor into it. Yes. That helps lighten it up a little. Yeah, totally. But it requires that you have enough, like, center to be able to observe that. Right. Like, enough strength to not get sucked into her, whatever she's experiencing. Yes. You know? Yeah. Great. Yeah. This is really, really helpful. Yeah. I think this is a great topic for anybody, really. Yeah. Totally. So the GFC at the end can help with this. Yeah, totally. So there is a GFC that will start to help you release the distortions that keep you from coming into the present moment to experience that joyfulness. There is a GFC on the website that is for joy if you want to go deeper on that. Okay, great. Yeah. So either way, there are resources for you. Okay. Thanks, Karen. Thank you, Dia. And for those of you who are interested in accessing more of that present moment, so you have the opportunity to experience more joy, please listen to the group frequency calibration that's associated with this episode. And if you are enjoying this episode, please hit the like button. And if you'd like to know when the next episode is going to be aired, please click on the little bell and you'll be notified when the next episode comes live. We're about to start the group frequency calibration, or GFC, where we actually do the frequency work and where change is catalyzed. To get to the GFC, click on the square that'll appear to the right or the link in the description below. It's time to bring in a new experience, a new consciousness, and a new world. Let's rise together.